Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about what my journey has been like to transition from taking a 5-year hiatus off of my profession and getting back into it slowly but surely. I can't believe that I'm back actually, because if you asked me this time last year, I wouldn't be so sure that I could do it. And I was pretty slash very slash extremely nervous about coming back to the profession. So, my profession is optometry. If you're new here, thank you for subscribing and thank you for coming and seeing what I have to say. And go ahead and like this video, it helps me out. I have some notes here. So, I re entered my profession like you fall asleep, slowly, and then all at once. So, I'm going to take you back to March 13th, 2020, which was my last day at Target Optical, my last day at my profession before my hiatus. And I didn't know it was going to be my last day. In fact, on September 10th, 2019, it was my 7-year anniversary of starting working as an optometrist. I posted on Instagram, I said I finished my 7th year as an OD, and I wasn't getting the 7-year itch yet. And I was like, I wonder if I'm gonna just keep on working forever without getting the thought to move or do something else. And little did I know that what was around the corner from March, or what was around the corner when I wasn't going to come back for several years actually. And I was going to look at a lot of different possibilities. March to about September of 2020, I debated and I went back and forth, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes each minute, whether I should renew my lease with the Target Optical. When I was at Target Optical, I was a subcontractor, independent contractor. So I owned my own business and I had a lease with Target Optical, who had a lease with Target, and so that's how I did my business. I got paid directly from patients and from the insurance company. So when I did my own billing and coding, I got paid from them. So I went back and forth. I was like, I don't know. I know I'm not. I know I'm not ready, but I know I'm also not ready to completely let go of my life here and my career here, my patience here, all that. I went back and forth, but I was like, I know I'm not ready to go back. Uh, there was no vaccines at the time. People didn't know what they were doing, and I didn't feel right about going back. Eventually, I decided not to with the help of my regional manager. We had a lot of discussions, long discussions about my options, what would happen to me if I did or didn't renew, and what would be expected of me if I did or didn't renew. He assured me and insisted that I would still be rehirable with Luxottica, which is the parent company of Target Optical, Provision, LensCrafters, Sears Optical in the past, Sunglass Hut, all those things. I decided not to renew, and that was very difficult because I started to think of myself. I didn't know who I was if I wasn't an optometrist. Or more realistically, I knew who I was and who I could be without being an optometrist, but I was afraid of the backlash, the social backlash, and the familial backlash, and what that would look like. And certainly, I didn't know how difficult it would be when other people didn't understand my decision. Around November, I moved back in with my parents and still very much in the reckoning stage. So I had um, spoken to some life coaches, some therapists who gave free therapy during the pandemic, and I talked to them, and I was like, I don't know, like I feel very uncomfortable about like the things that my family says. I feel very uncomfortable about who I feel like I am as a person. I feel kind of lost, kind of unsure, very scared of the virus, like over overarching over everything, and very scared of humanity and the way people were treating everything. And so, also during all of that, I was thinking about all of the unhappiness that came from my job, all of the things that I felt were unfair about my job and about the people that I worked with. Because as an independent contractor, you kind of have, um, you can kind of see through a different perspective what the corporate world is like and how employees are treated, because I wasn't an employee, but I could see how they were treated, and I knew from both sides, like how people were treated, how people felt like they were treated, how they wanted to be treated, and how that wasn't always, or it was hardly ever the case, really. And uh, so I was definitely in a big reckoning stage about, like, if I do go back to my career, it's gonna be different. It has to be different, because I just couldn't go back with like my morality there. In that, I didn't know where, when, how, or even if I was going to return. At first, I was thinking I would move back to Pennsylvania and my Pennsylvania license. And so I kept my Pennsylvania license active, keeping my continuing education up to date. I got many offers, and there are lots of recruiters sliding into my DMs to come back, to go to a different Target office or a different Target optical, to work remotely, to stay with Luxottica, to different like a Pearl Vision or a Lens Crafters from the Target, to jump over to VisionWorks or Walmart or Optical, or go to private practices. I was getting recruited all of the time, and people kind of somehow knew that I wasn't working, but my license was active. At the same time, my father was pressuring me to get my New York license. And still at the same time, I was getting many Facebook messages from patients asking where I was, where I went, why I left, why I wasn't back, why I wasn't practicing, even after the quote unquote guidelines were lifted. And quote unquote, there was PPE. All of this was a big turnoff, a huge turnoff to me. I deleted my LinkedIn, I deleted my Facebook, and eventually I deleted all of my social media. Also, at the same time, I was going low and no contact with several family members, and I didn't like the idea of being the doctor somewhere, because I did not want to be found. I have had several occasions where people called my office looking for me. People I didn't want to be calling my office didn't want people to know where I was, but all they had to do was search my name and they could find me very easily. And I didn't like that. And I didn't like the idea of that going forward either. Husband and I decided to become New York lifers during this time back in New York. And in 2023, I started the process of applying for my New York license. As I was still quite nervous about returning to work after a long hiatus and wanting to ease back in, it took me probably 12 tries to complete the application. I kept having panic attacks when I was doing it. When I went to the website, I would maybe get 10% through one day and then have to stop, come back the next day, get about 40% through the next day, and then completely freak out. Then I needed to take weeks off before I tried again. So it took me a while. It took me until the end of 2023. In November 2023, I officially got my New York license, and I let my Pennsylvania one lapse. We had many talks about this, long talks about if I would go back, if I should renew my Pennsylvania license as well and keep that active, even though I was looking for work in New York. And the thought was I did not want to return to Pennsylvania. I wasn't planning on starting work, but I felt like I made a huge step. So even though I got my license, I was not actively applying yet for a couple of months. but that huge step was a really big, I was really motivated by it. I was extremely proud of myself for doing it. But then at the same time, it also just felt like that was what I was supposed to do. What took you so long? All of those little demons were in my head. So it was hard to celebrate as someone who was raised on like reward systems and whatnot. At the beginning of 2024, I started therapy because I refused to return to work before I figured all of that stuff out that was happening in my head. The fear, the nervousness, the imposter syndrome, the distaste that I had for everything, and also making sure I was doing the right thing for myself because I still was not sure if I was going to go back. I got my therapist's help to make sure that when I was interviewed, I was clear about what I was able to do. I didn't have to go into any specifics about having anxiety or having depression or any of that, but I reassured myself that I was not desperate for the work. I was not desperate for any specific job, because agreeing to something that would make me extremely uncomfortable would be much worse than relying on others financially or taking a job outside of my profession if my mental health stayed good. So it was really important to keep my mental health good, and if that meant that I had to rely on help from others, or if I needed to work but not in optometry, which I did do a little bit. I did some work with a friend's business at her printing business, which is where my husband's work was. So I helped her out some, and that doing that work was extremely good for my mental health. During this time, I also worked hard to make my craft fairs successful, which I did. I started craft fairs, I think, maybe in 2022, and they started real slow, but then they started to pick up, and people got excited to see my wares. In 2024, I got COVID, and then my husband Chris was hospitalized, and we reevaluated a lot. When somebody in a couple goes to ICU, you have to kind of face that in a different way and reevaluate. I, of course, got anxious, but I still felt that I could do one day a week, or fill-ins, or a small amount of hours at an office, especially if I wasn't considered the doctor at the office. I still thought that was the right choice for me. I was still nervous about like what happens if I get sick, what happens if you get sick. I was still nervous about that, but I felt like that was something that I was able to handle. It was extremely lucky that I had my therapist when all that happened. Not lucky, because I made it happen. I made the choice to have a therapist. Okay. I, with my therapist and also with my husband and also with lots of thinking by myself, I knew that I had to use my other days to manage and create for my artistic career. 2025 was the best craft fair year by far. It kind of skyrocketed. 2025 was also when I had a little life kerfuffle that forced my hand to go back to optometry, kind of. My plans were not going to exactly pan out, so I decided to just take the leap, and I started applying. I talked to Target Optical to see if there was anyone there. I think I didn't mention, before I got COVID, I had applied to a couple local places to see if they needed any fill-ins, and I didn't ever hear back from any of them. And I kind of had a little bit of a bad experience, actually, with one of the places, and it wasn't a right fit, and instead of saying that we weren't the right fit, they kind of it was a little like hoop jumpy and kind of like weird. And then it, I don't want to revisit that right now because it wasn't a good time for me. But I, after that whole debacle, I kind of focused more on my craft fair stuff. So there was a silver lining. Back to 2025, when I had another plan change, let's call it. So I started applying. I contacted Target Optical. I was like, if there's a Target on Long Island near me that wants to open an optical, I'm here, I'm ready. I didn't ever hear back from them. And then I talked to Luxottica at large. I laid out what I wanted. I laid out my dream city, which is here in Kingston. And I got it. I got my ideal amount of work in my dream location. Before I accepted anything, before I even started interviews, I got all the information possible. They were salivating, and I kept my cool. They were like, we want you here. We want you here bad. We want you here yesterday. And I made sure I got the benefits that I needed. I made sure I got the flexibility that I needed, and that I knew my worth. I got the top of the pay range that was told to me in my interviews, and I was set to start January of 2026. I went ahead and decided to move the process up a little bit. We found an apartment starting in October, and I let them know, and they said that we could start the onboarding slowly and kind of ease me into it. I started training, taking classes, filling out so much paperwork. The paperwork that goes into coming back into a profession, it's massive. But I had a lot of help this time because I was an employee instead of doing it all on my own. I didn't know how much like pressure I had on myself as being an independent contractor, but it was like, I think that was kind of what was really difficult for me, because I saw myself as like a certain figure, and then that made my patients, my clients, see me as a certain kind of figure. And now I just go in and I do my job, and then I go home at the end of the day, and it's a lot better. There's still like always going to be some guilt and some bad feelings about like your interactions with some people, but it's a lot better because it's not my business that's going to be affected, I guess. I mean, in some ways, but it's I don't own the business anymore. There was a lot before I could officially start, and my official start date was 11/12/2025, and I was sick. I had a cold, and I was really low energy. I was an anxious mess, and I cried on the way to work. I had a cough all day, and it was hard to get used to not only a new system, but my first ever electronic health record system. And I felt like I was very behind. But it felt like I was back home, too. I was afraid that I would have to relearn and reacquaint myself with doing exams entirely and patient care altogether. But I just had to get to know these machines and this record system and these patients. Just like when you start any job, the first day on the job is really hard, and the first couple of weeks can be really difficult. After my first day of work of patient care, I asked for another day of training before my second day of patient care. That helped me out a lot. I got to ask certain questions that had come up and figure out what things were slowing me down. And I got to ask the other doctor that works there, and that was perfect. Then I had 2 weeks off for craft fairs after Thanksgiving, so I was able to step back, see it again from a different perspective, and see how things were going, and see that I could do both. I could do the craft fairs as well as be an optometrist. And I was like, this is exactly right. I did make a mistake as I started. At first, I could only take out-of-pocket paying patients for a while because there was a mistake on my credentialing. When I got back in 2023, when I got my New York license, I somehow had not signed up for diagnostic drops, which is something that you need to do as an optometrist, and especially to take insurance. And I think when I was signing up, I was not in the mindset of I'm going to start working right away, and that's probably why that part got missed. Also, at the same time, New York was going through a systematic change, I guess, where optometrists could start prescribing oral medications, and I knew I didn't want to be part of that, so I might have confused the two. Either way, I forgot what that was, so there was a problem with that, and it backed everything up a little bit. And I did not know that there was a problem until I got denied. I did the whole application process and got the denial letter. It was not a big deal. At the time, I was like, "This is terrible." The people I worked with were like, "What's happening? What's taking so long?" Because it was also making their job. Like they had to do an extra step to make sure that I was only seeing cash paying patients. At the time, it felt pretty bad, but I took my time. I didn't rush in to fix it right away like I would have when I was an independent contractor. But I called people. I leaned on others for help, like I did when I was filling out the paperwork. I called people. I leaned on people who were in charge of things, and like these are the kind of people that I did not have as an independent contractor. I was a business of one. So I didn't have any of those people. I'm working for a big corporation now, and there's lots of people, and I called them all. And then I called also the people who are working with the specific insurances and with the New York licensing, and I was able to figure out exactly what I needed to do. The fee that I had to pay was not that much, so that was very, very good. Oh, big thing that I did is I was honest when I needed help. I was like, I don't know how to figure out the answer to this. Could you help me? And then they would look through my paperwork, they would call people for me, and I got a lot of help that way. When I was so anxious, so very anxious about starting this again, I fear that if I didn't have that help, I would not get this done. But now that I did have the help, I was able to kind of keep myself motivated to fix it. And this is what got me through the help. Even though I still feel a lot of anxiety around work, I get the quote unquote Sunday scaries because I work different hours and different days. I still get anxiety. I still feel like I can't do it. I still feel like I'm not good enough. I hardly feel it when I'm actually at work and working. I got used to the slit lamp again. I got used to the new phoropter. And as always, patients love me. So I took a 5-year hiatus off of optometry, and I was able to get back in, and it wasn't like I was starting over. It was like I was coming back home. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening.